Hey everybody, this is part of our full-length primetime podcast. You can check it out on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, YouTube, plenty more. I hope you enjoy.
This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And we are back for another edition of the Primetime Podcast here on Most Valuable Podcast. If you're on YouTube, hello. It is wonderful and great to see your faces yet again this week. If you're on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, or Stitcher, thank you for giving us the download, giving us the listen today. And Brandon, we got a jam-packed show as
Don't we always?
There was a ton of news happening this week, and the biggest of which was Jonathan Giles. Earlier in the week, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to send Brandon the topics, and I saw that Jonathan Giles had narrowed down his choices. I'm like, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait because maybe as we get closer to record day, something will happen. Well, guess what? Something did happen. Jonathan Giles going to LSU. Instead of looking at how he helps that team, because we'll have to wait a year to see, we're going to look at how it hurts Texas Tech and what are they going to do to move on from Giles. Then we're going to look at the 2018 NFL Draft again. You guys loved our topics last week where we talked about Josh Rosen and Josh Allen. This week, we're going to take a look at the running back position and look at Saquon Barkley from Penn State. Could he be the best running back in this year's draft class this season? And then Mason over in Vanderbilt, Derek Mason, gets a contract extension. We're going to kind of play a theme to that, and not coaches that should get extensions, but coaches who could be on the hot seat this season in 2017. So sit back, relax. We got a great show for you guys. And Brandon, we're going to start with Jonathan Giles as the 5'11" wide receiver. He was a Biletnikoff Award finalist last year, led Texas Tech in receiving yards, receptions, touchdowns, yards per catch at 16.8. He is sayonara, see you later. Had a falling out with the coaching staff. They benched him, said, hey, you're the backup. He said, you know what? Audi 5000, I am now going to transfer to a different school. He is in LSU. He'll have to sit out this year, but 2018, he will be a member of the LSU Tigers with 2 years of eligibility. I'm going to just ask you this straight up. How does this transfer of Jonathan Giles hurt the Texas Tech Red Raiders?
Well, I'll tell you straight up, Ricky, that you know they're known for a team as a big team in the Big 12, especially this past year, that can put up points. I mean, my gosh, the amount of times I feel like they had 60-plus points in a game this past year was ridiculous, and Giles was a huge part of that. And I think that when you take away his 69 receptions and you let's just say 1,200 yards, let's call it 1,200 yards, and his 13 touchdowns, you're taking away a whole heck of a lot. And honestly, then you have to take a look then at the guy who's going to be the next man up. And the next man up for this last year was Kiki Kuti at 55 receptions, 890 yards, 7 touchdowns. And he's no longer there. So you're looking at Derek Willis, Cameron Batson, and Reginald Davis III as your starters. And excuse me, Kiki Kuti is still there. My apologies.
He's just now a backup.
He's just a backup. As I'm looking at their depth chart, the Texas Tech Raiders, Red Raiders depth chart right now, he's a backup. But if you're getting that out of your backup, you can be pretty happy about that. But what that just goes to show is you look at Giles. This guy is the glue. This guy is the number one receiver. And does this show that, you know, maybe you do have another guy there in Kuti who can be the next man up, who can be the Giles that you would hope that he can be, or somebody can be on this team, then I think that that's going to be a good thing. You also have Dylan Cantrell there too, but I think that you have this one guy in Jonathan Giles who was clearly your number one. And to lose your number one before you even had to, because he has a falling out with the coaching staff, he moves along, that doesn't necessarily bode well for you. It could be something then, in the locker room where, guys are upset, guys aren't, as passionate. I'm saying these things, not that that's what's actually going on, but I think that when you lose a guy that good and you lose that talent, it does take a little bit of a hit, and then it falls on these other guys, and then you think, okay, they were good as a number 2, a number 3, but will they be good as that number 1? And I think that there's been a couple of situations that we've seen in the past where a guy is a really great number 2 guy, but the minute that you make him that number 1, he can't handle the pressure, or it just isn't the right role for him. Mm-hmm. And we've seen teams struggle because they do that. And hopefully for the Texas Tech Red Raiders, they don't see that because they have so much firepower. But Ricky, I know this is about Jonathan Giles, but I think one thing I also want to mention before I throw it back over to you is their quarterback, Pat Mahomes, is no longer there.
He's with your team.
He's a Kansas City Chief.
He's with one of your teams.
They now have Nick Shimonek.
Mm-hmm.
And has he gotten some reps before? Yes. Redshirt junior. And I'm interested to see how this will work with Shimonek in there at quarterback, not Mahomes, and Shimonek not having that solid number 1 guy to be able to throw it up to and know he's going to go get it.
Well, and the thing that I want to add on to that is this Jonathan Giles transferring from Texas Tech is the 3rd biggest hit to this offense this offseason. The first of which was what you mentioned. It's a natural thing that happens, but a player saying, I'm going to go and declare for the draft, I'm going to continue my career at the next level. They lose Patrick Mahomes to the Kansas City Chiefs. Then in April, in a practice, they lose their leading rusher from last year, and DeLeon Ward blows out his left leg from getting a handoff from the new quarterback, and now you have the Jonathan Giles transfer. So this offense has already taken 3 hits, trace hits, this offseason, and this is something where we're still early to where you can rebound from this, hopefully. But I look at this Big 12, and I look at the schedule for Texas Tech. The first 2 games don't kind of scare me with these losses. Eastern Washington, I still think you can win that at home. Arizona State, you can win that at home. These aren't the Arizona Sun Devils that we saw 2 years ago with Berkovici. But then you get Applegate's Houston at Houston, and then right after that you get Oklahoma State, which to me they're a team that's going to challenge Oklahoma for the top of the Big 12 this year. Kansas, who will be improved, they're on the road. I mean, you get all the Big 12 after that. I don't have to run through everybody, but I just think that this Texas Tech team, the biggest question this offseason before all of the injury and the Jonathan Giles thing, obviously the Mahomes thing we knew was going to happen. The biggest question was, could Kingsbury field a defense this year? That's the one thing that's been lacking for Texas Tech. They've had this amazing offense, the air raid offense that they run, but Kingsbury has never been able to kind of field that defense that you want to see. And I know what you're saying, Ricky, it's the Big 12. They don't play defense. It's no problem. But yeah, it is a problem when you're 5-7 and we're 3-6 in the conference last year. I don't know if the defense is up to snuff to make that next step. And then you add on the injury to Ward and the leaving of Giles and Texas Tech. I look at 7th in the Big 12 last year. Might be sitting at the same. Might be sitting at 3-6 yet again at the bottom, looking up at everybody else.
Ricky, another interesting thing is that Jonathan Giles is the big receiver we're talking about, but the receiver that we're not talking about is Tony Brown, who also transferring out of there as well. And he only caught 27 passes last year. You know, he didn't have the impact that Giles had, but it makes you wonder, another wide receiver leaving the program. Now, why is that? Why is that? Is that a program issue? Is that an individual issue? Is it an issue at all? Is it just guys that feel like they can go and win somewhere else? And Brown, I'm not even exactly sure where he is going, but he was leaving shortly after Giles was. And I think that it's an interesting thing to bring up, though, especially because you have this huge guy that leaves. And now you have this other guy, only 27 passes caught last year, and he announces that he's going to be transferring. Mm-hmm. I think it's an interesting thing to bring up.
Well, and the thing that I think of is this something where you could look at Kingsbury and say, well, are you the problem? Because the thing with Texas Tech is, I know that his first year they went 8-5, and in 2015 they went 7-6. But the thing I look at, and maybe it's because I'm an outsider looking in, I'm not a Red Raider fan, bleeding true and true, is I look at Kingsbury and I say, the only thing that I hear about you is that moms on the recruiting trail want to date you and that you look like Ryan Gosling. I don't hear much about your team in the national scope. And the only reason we're talking about your team right now is because your leading receiver left you for a program in LSU. And I look at each of the seasons that Texas Tech had, the 8-win season that he had his first year. You look at the conference record, 4-5. They finished 6th in the conference. Only reason they got there, they beat SMU, they beat Stephen F. Austin, they beat Arizona State, they won their non-conference games. Texas State, one of them. 3 of those they should have won. The Arizona State was the big win late in the season because Arizona State was the number 16th ranked team at the time, and that was actually in the Holiday Bowl that they did that. Then I look at the 2014 season. That was a abysmal year for them. They win 2 of their non-conference games in Central Arkansas and UTEP. You should beat those teams with your eyes closed. They play Arkansas in Jones AT&T Stadium. They go ahead and lose that game because that's a big-time opponent. And then you look at their conference schedule, 2-7. They finish 8th. Then in 2015, 7-6, but you finish 4-5 in the conference. Last year, 5-7, but you finish 3-6. I look at it this way. You can schedule cupcake teams and get to your 7-8 wins, even your 6 wins to be bowl eligible. But what I am looking at is you have not been able to field a team to win more than 4 games in the Big 12, and that's when, as a program, I look at it. 2 wide receivers have left already. This is a team where, are we sitting here just trying to be bowl eligible and schedule 4 cupcakes and then hope we win 3 or 4 or maybe even 2 conference games? Or do we want to field a team that can win the Big 12? And I hope that the latter would be the goal that the Red Raiders are shooting for.
Well, Ricky, I think I might be able to help shed a little light on why they are struggling to do this. According to Scout.com, Texas Tech is down to 11 signees from 20 in the 2015 recruiting class, with just 16 left from the 46 signed in 14 and 15 combined. That's a retention rate of 34.7%, and that is the worst in the Big 12. In November 2016, the Red Raiders had lost 21 scholarship players in the previous 18 months. They can't get anyone to stick around.
And that, to me, it's one of those things where I look at it and go, something needs to change. There's a reason why these players are leaving our team, and I'm not going to say, oh, it's the other players on the team. No, it's this coaching staff. And if I'm the AD, I'm looking at it this way. Players are leaving, and we're losing conference games. Something needs to change. And I know that Kingsbury isn't a coach I'm going to bring up in our third segment because we're talking about him right now. But if he goes another season of abysmal conference games, I'd fire him at the end of the year. I'd say, you're gone. See ya. Sayonara. Don't come back. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you, because we need to win some football games here. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Red Raiders make a move at the end of the season unless they have an amazing season. But I'll be honest, I don't see that from them. I don't see that from this team. I don't see them getting anywhere near the season that would save it. Because like I said, Eastern Washington, Okay, that's one win. Arizona State, that's another win. Your other non-conference game is at Houston. I'm sorry, Houston's winning that game. That's 2 wins right there. Kansas, you'll be able to win. Maybe Baylor, but I maybe pick Baylor in that one because I like what Coach Rule's doing more than Coach Kingsbury. It's hard for me, other than Kansas, to find games. Iowa State, maybe you beat them. Maybe you get the best of Kansas State. But those are the only 3 Big 12 teams where I can look at it and say, okay, yeah, those are some wins you can have in conference. You're not going to beat Texas. You're not beating Baker Mayfield, and you're not beating Mason Rudolph. Try again later when they don't have them.
So another interesting stat, I just kind of keep throwing these stats out there to you because I think that it all kind of helps to go up to and back to the coaching, the staff, and where they have this team going. So ESPN did a Big 12 power ranking after spring ball was in the books, all completed, done, everything. Where do you think that they had Texas Tech?
Dead last.
No, you're very close.
Let me guess. Dead last was Kansas. Texas Tech was right above them.
You're right. And here are the comments. Yeah. Texas Tech's offense took a hit last week when 2016 leading receiver Jonathan Giles announced that he's transferring. The Red Raiders have other capable weapons for new quarterback Nick Shimanek and Kiki Kuti, Dylan Cantrell, and Cameron Batson. But Tech's job of replacing first-round quarterback Patrick Mahomes just got even tougher. And that's completely accurate. But the fact that you come out of the spring ball and you're second to last, and you have this explosive offense, not one thing about that says anything good. Texas Tech has been known for having an explosive offense. You mentioned this earlier. They're also known for having 0 defense. They legitimately will be in a 65-60 game this year. And they could win or they could lose. You just never know. They may score enough points, but they may give up too many. 60, whichever way, if they win that game, they already gave up too many, but they just got lucky. I think that for them, it's not all going to be with the offense. I think that if they focused a little bit more on the defensive side of the football, they wouldn't have to put as much pressure on the offense. But they like offense. Kingsbury likes offense. And Ricky, not to spoil anything, but that is a guy who has got to be on the hot seat. Because you take a look at some of these other teams that have offense. Let's talk about number 1 in the power rankings after spring ball.
Oklahoma State.
You're wrong.
Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oklahoma State is 2.
One of the
Oklahoma State is 2. But Oklahoma
State's going to be good.
Oklahoma State, the 2 of them.
Yeah.
1,
high
2
powered
punch. They are able to score a lot of points, but they find a way to find just enough defense.
Well, you know where they
to
get
be able
all
to compete.
You know where they get all their power there in Stillwater from the Mike Gundy mullet. It's all all that power is in his mullet. That's where it's all stored. A little fun fact for you guys.
Is that an alternative fact?
It is an alternative fact, but not fake news. Never fake news here on the Primetime Podcast. But
I think that just goes to show again their ranking of 9th in the power rankings after spring ball. I understand it's spring ball. Does it mean a whole lot? Yes and no. But to be 9 and you've lost all of these different things. I mean, if you were somewhere maybe in the middle and you had lost all that, you're like, okay, but 9th.
And I'm reading here from, this is USA Today's For the Win. This was earlier this spring where apparently Coach Kingsbury kind of pulling a strategery from Coach K where he has banned the players from wearing the team logo, the double T's, in the locker room. The reason why, he said, you have to earn it. They have to earn it. And I look at this and I go, okay, kind of worked for Duke because, let's be honest, Coach K does this, you can buy into it because Coach K is a phenomenal coach. Coach Kingsbury, not the same way, not the same pedigree as Coach K. I don't think that this tactic helps make his football team any better. I think that you look at it and you go, I get it, you're trying to motivate the guys, but you don't have that same je ne sais quoi, you don't have that same attitude to it coming from you than it did coming from Coach K this year when he did it for Duke early on in their season when we were talking all about Grayson Allen, and this was right after the trip on the Elon player.
Which number?
That.
Which number?
I think it was number 3. Was it number 3? Number 3, number 4? One of those two. And I can't help but think, and this is the last thing I'll ask you. I'll give my opinion, and I'll ask you. I cannot help but think Cliff Kingsbury gets fired at the end of this year, and I will ask you this question, and this is kind of where the Jonathan Giles conversation has taken us. How does it hurt him? The coach gets fired at the end of this year. Does Kingsbury get fired from Texas Tech?
Depending on what are you saying that do they have a bad season? I mean, are you saying that they already had a bad season?
Even if it's a 4-win season, which would match his best that he's had in the Big 12. A 4-win conference season.
To be 5-7 again? To be
What if they got 7 wins? That's the best. That's
in
the best.
conference.
Overall, 7 wins overall, 4 in conference. So that means he went 2-1,
7-6.
Yeah, 7-6, 7-5, maybe. Maybe made a bowl game and lost it.
It depends on what they see moving forward with him. If they see a future with him, if they see that he is able to really take grasp of this program and really move it forward, then they may look at that and go, you know what? We will give you another chance. We will see what you will be able to do. But at the same time, too, if you're saying that to yourself, you're already thinking, I'm kind of thinking I want to go in a different direction. And sometimes it's good to go in a different direction. Because you know what? For how long is Texas Tech going to be the team in the Big 12? Man, they score a lot of points. How many wins do they have this year? Probably not.
Man, they
not
score
many.
a lot of points.
Probably not many. How much longer do you want to be that team? Instead of the team that's like, man, they put up a lot of points and they win a lot of games. Which team do you want to be?
I want to be the second one.
And that's a question that you got to ask yourself.
And kind of to wrap this up, we're going to throw it on to you guys. What do you guys think? First off, how does the Jonathan Giles transfer hurt Texas Tech? And then kind of the second conversation we got into. What do you think about Coach Kingsbury with Texas Tech? And does it get fired at the end of this season? Because I am not optimistic that the Red Raiders are going to have a good season, so I'm assuming it's going to be a mediocre, maybe sixth at best in the conference, and you're sitting there towards the bottom. So let me know what you would do if you would fire Coach Kingsbury or not. Let us know down below in the comment section.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed a lot of emotion. If you want more, click this video right over my left shoulder. You will certainly not regret it.